and welcome to Craft with Sarah. In this video, we're going to be making a remembrance project for a pet which has sadly passed over the Rainbow Bridge. This lovely rainbow design has space in the middle for you to add a photograph of your pet, as well as space at the top to add a name, and if you wanted to, you could even add the dates of their birth and of their passing into the cloud at the bottom. You can download the free cutting file for this project at craftwithsarah.com/free-svgs, or follow the link in the description of this video to go straight to the download page. The download comes in a zip folder, and you need to unzip this before you can upload the files into Cricut Design Space. Once you've downloaded and unzipped the folder, open up Design Space and start a new project. Go into Upload on the left and then Upload Image. From there, you can click Browse to find the SVG file on your computer, or you can drag and drop it in. Make sure you choose the unzipped version of the folder, and then the file you want is the one which starts SVG in the file name. The other files won't load correctly in Design Space, so make sure you choose that one that starts SVG. I'm going to drag and drop that in, and then it should look like this with all of the layers one on top of the other. If yours looks different and you see all the layers next to each other instead, that means you've accidentally uploaded the wrong file. So if that's the case, click Cancel down on the bottom and then try again and make sure you upload the one which starts SVG. Press Upload, and then the design will be uploaded and then show in your recent uploads. So you can click it to get a green border around the edge, and then press Add to Canvas. I like to resize this first so that I know it will fit inside my shadow box frame. We need to measure our shadow box so that we know how big to make the cutting file in Cricut Design Space. So get your frame, and this is mine. I'm using a Hobbycraft frame. And then I'm just going to open up these little tabs so that I can take out the spacer inside the frame. Take out the backing, and then I've got just that little bit of paper, and then this is my spacer. It's being stubborn and doesn't want to come out. This is what I'm going to measure to know how big to make the design. And just go from one side, let's put it in shot a bit more, one side to the other. So this is 6.5 inches from one very edge to the other very edge. And that's how big I'll make the Rainbow Bridge design in Cricut Design Space. So I'm going to type 6.5 into the width box, making sure that padlock icon is closed. If it's open, then click it before you change the size to close it. Because it's closed, it means when I hit enter, that height's going to change too. So now this is 6.5 by 6.5 inches, so it will fit perfectly inside my frame. I'll zoom in a little bit so that the next steps are easier to see. The first piece of customization that I'll do is to add a name. Go into text and then type out the name. Now I will just say here that I'm doing this for a made-up dog. I'm using a made-up name, and then when I put the photo in, that's just a stock image too. So I'm not actually using a real dog's information for this. Change the font by selecting the text and then going into the font drop down. You can choose whatever font you like, but I think a nice big bubbly one with kind of cute rounded letters fits with the rainbow shape really nicely. And the Cricut Access font that I think looks perfect is called BFC Love Quinn. So I'm going to type Love Quinn with two N's in there, and then select that font. Let's move it here, make it a little bit bigger, and then you could leave it like this if you want with it in a straight line, but I quite like curving it around that rainbow. You can only use the curve feature if you're on the desktop version of Design Space, not the mobile app. So go into curve if you're on a computer, and then just have a little play, getting that curve to go around the rainbow. I think that's about where I want it to go. So now I can work on adding an offset, which is a border around all of the letters. You previously used to only be able to use offset on the desktop version of Design Space 2, but as of this week, the iOS version of the app has been updated so that you can use offset on that now. So if you have an iPhone or an iPad, then update your Design Space to the latest version and then you should get the offset feature. If you're on the desktop version like me, then you've already got it. So I'm going to click into offset. And then I want to give it quite a thin border. So by default, this is loaded in really big. I'm going to choose 0.1 for the number and then press apply. You can see my F is still going to be separate to the rest of the letters, but that's okay. That'll still be quite easy to stick together. I want to fill in a few of these little gaps. So I'll hide my original text by clicking the I next to it in the layers panel and then choose my offset. Change the colour to the same grey that's around the edge, which I'm actually going to be doing from Silvercard. And then I just want to fill in that tiny gap in the N. So let's click it and then go to contour. Click that little gap and then close out. And now that's filled in. And it just means that it's going to be that little bit easier to cut out and we're not going to have a weird little gap in the middle of that offset. Now I can turn my text back on. And I actually want to change this so that every letter is a different colour. To do that, click on the text layer and then at the top of the layers panel, press ungroup. And this is now split every single letter onto its own layer. I want these in rainbow colours to match the main rainbow. So what I'm going to do is click on the F first, go into the colour box, and then under material colours, this is the colours that are already in the project. So I know if I choose that red, it's the same red as this part in the rainbow. And then I'll go orange, yellow, green, blue, which is the darker blue, and then back to red for those last two. And there we go, that's looking really, really cute. I'm not worrying too much that it's not exactly in the middle of my design because it's going to cut out from separate pieces anyway. So I'll just make sure when I'm sticking it together, I put it in the middle. To make sure I don't accidentally change the text when I'm doing the rest of the changes, I'm going to click each layer in the layers panel with the shift key held down on my keyboard. And that will select all of the letters plus the offset layer. And then at the top, press group. Now I can move this about and it will all stay together. And this is great because if you did want to change the size around, you can do that now and everything will change together. Next, we're going to add a photo to the little bottom section of the rainbow. Now, if you notice that my Design Space looks a little bit different to how it did a few seconds ago, that's because there was a Design Space update in between me recording the different parts of this video. So this is now running version 7.7, which is currently the latest version. To upload a photo, go into Upload and then Upload Image. And then just like before, you can either click Browse to find the file on your computer, or you can drag and drop it in. Your photo will probably be a JPEG file, but it might be a PNG, and these are going to be print then cut. So we're going to print these on our home printer and then cut it out using the Cricut. So it's going to look a bit different when we drag and drop this in to how it did when we uploaded the SVG at the start of the video. You'll get a screen which looks like this. Because we're uploading a photograph, you want to choose complex, which is showing that it's a nice detailed image and we want it to keep all of that detail. Press continue, and then you don't need to change anything on this page unless you want to take the background out of your photo, but I actually don't because this looks quite nice with the green behind it. So I'm just going to click apply and continue. Make sure you choose print then cut image and then press upload. This has appeared in my recent uploads, so I can click on it and then press add to canvas. You can see this is actually loaded in massive. It's come in at over 20 inches wide. So I'm just going to close my padlock by clicking it and then resize this so that it's easier to work with. I'm going to need to put it in this little gap, so it will need to be even smaller. But the easiest way to resize this is going to be to click on the shadow box and then press ungroup at the top of the layers panel. I'm going to hide my text by clicking the little arrow just to collapse those layers and then pressing the I. And then I'm also going to hide the layers of the shadow box until I get down to the last blue one. And this is going to be the gap that my little dog will show through. So I'm going to click Arrange, Center Back with the dog photo selected, and then drag it one up so it's above this white layer here, which is just a white square. And now I can put this in and resize it, but you'll find that when you move it, it moves the blue instead. So you might find at this point it's easiest to move it with the arrow keys on your keyboard, because then you can keep moving it. And I'm also going to make it smaller and then just keep moving it and resizing it until I'm happy with what's showing in that little gap. So I think that's probably about right. I'm going to keep this as a square photo. I don't need to actually cut it to the size of this gap, because all I'm going to do when it's cut out is just stick the whole square behind the blue piece. So we don't need to do anything fancy now to the photo, it's just ready to be used as is. Turn all the other layers back on, and then we can see how it's looking. I'm going to turn the word on as well. You could cut it out like this at this point, and actually when I go on to make my shadow box in a moment, this is the version that I cut out. But one thing I thought after I'd made it was that it would be nice if you maybe added a little bit of extra detail to this cloud using the draw feature on a Cricut. For example, you could add a phrase or maybe a nickname for the dog, or perhaps the date that they were born and maybe the date that they passed away. And it's just a little something extra you can add to make this frame super personal to you. To do that, go into text and then type out what you want to put. Let's just go best dog ever. I'm going to change this to a writing font. So in fonts, I'm going to go to filters and then writing. And I think a nice script font will look good. And then I'm just going to position it where I want it to go. And then what you need to do is attach that to the cloud layer, because if you don't attach it, then the Cricut doesn't know that you want it to do that drawing on that particular cloud. So choose your text layer, look down the layers panel and find the cloud layer, which is this first clouds, which is just the one cloud in the front. And then press attach. That moves the layer to the top, so to put it back into position, I'm going to close up those letters to make it easier. Then just drag and drop it back so it goes underneath the silver frame and above the other cloud layer. This is now all finished and ready to cut, but what I like to do first is press select all and then group all the layers together, just so that I know that if I accidentally move it, it's not going to cause any problems. Let's see what we've got when we click on Make It. First, we have the Print Then Cut. So this is going to print on our home printer and then just cut around the square. If you didn't want to use your Cricut to cut it out, because it is a simple square, you could just use a pair of scissors. We've then got the different layers of the shadow box, and this is the layer with the pen on it where we've got the best dog ever. And then going down, there's all the other layers which you've got in here, and we've got the letters. I'm going to cut all of mine on A4 paper, and you do need to change the paper size on every single colour, but I'll just do it on this orange one to show you. What you could do with the letters to help use up your material a little bit better is drag them into the middle of the cutout, and this is the bit that we're going to throw away because we only want the main square. So by putting the letters in the middle of it, it just means you can keep all of the rest of your bit of paper for another day. When you're doing the Print Then Cut, there are a couple of settings to choose to make sure you get the best quality print possible. I recommend printing onto a photo paper, either glossy or matte effect will look really good. When you press continue, Mine's going to complain at me because I haven't got my Cricut turned on yet, but I don't actually need that, just to show you the print then cut. What you do is you would click send to printer, and then make sure that you've got the use system dialog turned on. And that means when you click print, it will open up your printer settings. For this particular print then cut, it doesn't matter if you have the bleed on or off. The bleed gives it a little bit of extra colour around the edge, so that if your Cricut was a little bit off with the cutting, you'd still see the colour and you wouldn't get a white edge. But because we're sticking this square behind the cutout in the rainbow anyway, it doesn't matter if that's on. But the use system dialog is important, and then when you click print, you'll get your little pop out that shows you your printer settings. This will be different depending on what kind of printer you've got, but you should have an option for preferences or to change your settings or something along those lines. So I'm going to click into there, and then under the media type, choose the type of paper that you're using. So mine is glossy photo paper. And then, this is the most important bit, change the print quality to high, or it might say best or something like that, but whatever is the highest or the best quality, make sure you change your settings to that, because you'll get a much better print when you print it out. You'd then click OK and then print, and it would print out on your home printer, and then follow the rest of the steps on the screen to get everything cut out with your Cricut. Here are all of my layers cut out, and then I've just roughly placed them on top of each other so I can check firstly that I've got everything, but also that I'm happy with how all the colours are looking. Now, one thing I have already done before I started this video was I've glued the coloured letters onto the silver behind it, just to make things go a little bit quicker for this assembly tutorial. For the grey layers in Design Space, I used this pretty glitter card, and it adds a lovely effect. When the light shines on that, it's going to look really pretty. You can kind of see if I hold it into my camera lights. And that's also behind the text and showing in the paw print and the heart too. Okay, so let's move all this apart so that we can start sticking it together, because we're going to start from the bottom and work our way upwards. The very bottom layer is the solid white, and then the next one to go on top of that will be the blue from the bottom of our rainbow. So this one. I'm going to glue the picture of my dog to the back of this layer. So turn it upside down and then get some glue. I'm using Collall glue, which is my favourite to use for paper craft projects because it doesn't bend or wrinkle the cardstock like some other glues can do. And then I've put it into this needle tip applicator bottle that I get on Amazon, which means I can get it into all of the teeny tiny spaces really easily. So I'm just going to add a bit of glue around that cutout, and then add my picture, and then just turn it round and play about with it until you think the positioning looks right. And because we've used glue, it means there is that little bit of wiggle room to get it in the correct place. But that's looking right. So we can now start adding the foam pads onto the back of here. Any foam squares will do. So I've got mine here. I'm trying to decide, because this is quite a lot of layers in the shadow box. I think I might actually use my thinner foam pads, which are these ones. And these are only 1 millimeter thick, so they'll create a little bit of dimension between the layers, but not too much. You could use thicker ones if you want, so I'm not sure if you can really see the difference on my camera. But these ones are 2 millimeter thick. So it's double, and it will still work fine, but you'll just get much more shadowing between each of the layers of the rainbow where it's adding that extra depth. So I think the thinner ones are going to work out better. Also, if your shadow box isn't very thick, then these thinner foam pads can be a better option, just to make sure it's going to fit. Although even if you use the thick ones and it does end up a bit too thick, they will squish down when you put it in the frame. So once you put that back on the frame and close it up, it will squish the foam in to make it fit. So as well as putting the foam pads around the edge, you also want to add some in the middle. And that's to give it stability when all the other layers go on top. And also, by adding foam pads in the middle, it means that it doesn't sag down under the weight of those other layers. So as this is the bottom one, I'm going to make sure there's quite a lot on here. I don't want it all falling apart. So there's my foam squares. Now I can peel the tops off to reveal all of the stickiness underneath. Now that I've peeled all of those tops off, let's bring in the very bottom square, and I want to line this up. And it's important to get this accurately, because if you misalign it, you might find that it won't fit into your shadow box anymore. So I just gently drop that down on top so that if I needed to, I could pick it up again without damaging anything, because I haven't put any pressure on those foam pads yet. But actually that's aligned pretty perfectly. So I'm just going to push it all down to get a good stick. Is this green one of the rainbow. And we're going to do exactly the same. So add the foam pads and then stick it on. Once again, I'm putting some foam squares in the middle of the piece to give it that stability and to stop it sagging down. Then just like before, bring in your layers you've already done and line it up, being really careful to be accurate. Then gently drop it down. See if you're happy with how it's looking, which I am, and then push down to seal. We're going to do exactly the same thing for all of the other colours of the rainbow. So that's all of these 4 layers. So I'm going to do this bit off camera just because it's exactly the same as we just did with the green, and you don't need to watch me do every single layer when it's the same thing I'm going to be doing. Here's how my rainbow's looking with all of those layers done with the foam. And next we're going to add the glittery layer of clouds. And I've already put the foam pads on here, but I just wanted to show you before I stick it on. So you want to make sure you've got some foam down the edges. Otherwise, just like before, those edges will sag if there's nothing on there to give them stability. So that's where all my foam squares are for this piece. So I can just place it on and then push down to seal. The next layer is this one, which makes up the clouds on top of those little pictures. And this one, because these pictures are quite small, I'm not going to use foam because the shadows that it creates with that depth will take away from the pretty silver of my cardstock. So instead I'm going to glue this layer. I'll turn it upside down, get my little glue bottle back, and then just run it all the way around the edge and also around the tops of the clouds. And then carefully pick it up, lay it on top. There we go. I'm just pushing this one down gently because I don't want any of the glue to smush out the sides. And then we have this layer next, which will be a foam pad layer. And if you used the pen tool in Cricut to add your dates along here, then that's where they would be. But I didn't actually do that on this test one that I'm making now. I'm going to bring my design back in. Now I've taken off all the stickiness on those foam pads. Then line up this cloud piece and stick it down. There's just one more bit left now to go around the edge before we add the name, and it's this little silver piece. Now, depending on the size of your frame and how it works with the beveling on the edges of the photo frame, you might not actually really see an awful lot of this. So I'm going to glue it rather than add the foam. I'm hoping I can see a little bit of it in my frame, just because it's pretty and sparkly. But if it is all covered by the front of the frame, then that's okay too. There we go, there's that last layer of the main design. And now we can add the name of the dog across the sky. As I said at the beginning, I've already stuck my coloured letters to the silver. So I just need to bring these back in to get the positioning right. You don't want to start sticking without having all of the other letters in place, because you don't want to accidentally start too far over and then not be able to fit those last letters on. I like how that's looking, so I'm actually going to do the big piece first. So on this one, all of my letters are connected, so it'll be easier to do this one first. And you can glue this or you can use your foam pads. I'm going to use the foam because I think it's nice if the name has that extra little bit of dimension to get it popping out. Depending on the size of your letters, you might need to cut your foam pads smaller. So if that's the case, just grab a pair of scissors and cut some of them in half, and then you'll be able to fit it on your letters. Because what you don't want is any of those foam bits to poke out the edge, otherwise you'll see it. So there's that one. And I'll do the R next. And finally the F. There, so that is all of my layers now stuck together. You can see it's nice and thick in there. And we've got a good level of layering between the rainbow, but it's not too much because I did use those thin 1mm foam squares. And this is now all ready to go inside my shadow box. So here's my shadow box, and I'm actually going to take the glass out just for this video, otherwise you see it's going to pick up my camera lights and you won't actually be able to see what I'm doing. If you're doing this for real, then I recommend cleaning the glass on both sides with some glass cleaner, just to make sure there's no dust or anything on it. And you've now got two choices, so you can either put your design straight in and then add the backing and seal it up. But you might find, like mine, you have an awful lot of room in here. So when these flaps are down, it's all going to move about and it won't be very sturdy. And if you were like me and used the thin foam pads, then that's probably going to be the case. But if you use the thicker ones, you probably, I would imagine, find that it does actually come out far enough and you could just put it straight in. So I'm going to try it with the spacer. Put that back in. And then add that on the back, and now it's going to be too tall. Tuck it in there. Okay, so now it is actually a bit tall. So again, I've got two choices. I could either put the back on and just push it down, and that's going to squidge all of the foam pads in together. And I'll show you the effect that does. So if I turn it over, because it's squidging all of that foam, there isn't as much layers. You can't see the depth very well. And actually it almost looks like it's just been glued and not stuck. So that's another option you can do. Or there is the third way to do it. So for this, I'm gonna take that spacer out because it's way too thick. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is cut from craft foam, and that will add a little bit of extra depth for me to stick my frame behind. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken some funky foam or fun foam and just used a pair of scissors to cut some really thin strips. And then I've glued mine to the inside of the frame along every side, and I've got 2 layers worth in there. Now I've stuck mine directly in the frame because I'm not going to be using the glass. You probably are using the glass, so you can either stick it on the back of the glass or put your glue down the sides of the frame in here and glue the foam to that. And make sure you use white foam so you can't see it when you tilt at an angle. But now, when I go to add my layered design in there, it's going to sit on top of those 2 layers of foam and sit further back in the frame, which means when I put my back on, it will close up a lot neater. Now this is probably still a little bit far from that back of the frame, so what you can do is just add a few other pieces of foam in there to pad it out, and these are left over from another project I had, which is why they fit nicely and why they're pink. So if I put my back in now, you see now that's where it should be. So when I close this up, it's probably still a little bit low, but much better. So now I've got the correct depth for the frame. You can't see any of those little bits of fun foam that I put in there, and it's looking much nicer than if we hadn't have gone to that little bit of extra effort. If you'd like me to go through that in more detail, then please leave a comment, and if I get a couple of comments asking me to do that in a whole video, then I will record a separate video on how I just did that with the foam. But here is my memory box all finished and ready to go on the wall. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel using the little button underneath for loads more Cricut crafts and other tutorials. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!